Hello everyone, it's Carolynn Sander here with you today from carebearstamps.com. I'm a Canadian Stampin' Up! Independent demonstrator, and I'm here today with the Creating Kindness design team for another wonderful around the world blog hop and video hop. The theme for today's blog hop and video hop is techniques. The technique that I'm showcasing today is a version of the Joseph's coat technique, the difference being that the background sponging is done in an ombre pattern. I've therefore decided to call this technique Joseph's Ombre Coat Technique. To start off today's project, you're going to require one of your favorite Stampin' Up! Ink pads. Pick a color of your choice. Today I went with Lemon Lime Twist. You're also going to require a sponge brayer and a sheet of Whisper White cardstock that measures 5.5 by 4.25 inches. I'd like to mention just how awesome these sponge brayers are. You can detach the sponge component and you can wash that in the sink and dry it and then reuse it with different colors, so you don't have to solely have one sponge per color of pad. As you can see here, I'm inking up my sponge brayer nicely by rolling it across my pad. Make sure that you're not digging too deep into your pad because you will gouge it if so, and you can damage the ink pad. We are now going to brayer across our piece of cardstock, starting at one end and working towards the other. One end will be darker and one end will be lighter. This will create that ombre pattern that we talked about. We are now going to take one of my favorite background stamps from Stampin' Up! Called the Marbled Background Stamp, and we're going to apply it to our stamparatus. In order to do so, I am going to take a piece of paper and apply it to the stamparatus. I'm then going to apply the background stamp to the piece of paper like so. My piece of paper is held down by one of the magnets that I've wrapped in duct tape. And I'm now taking a pencil and I'm just going to trace around the background stamp. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a few moments here. So I've traced around there, and I'm going to now close the door of my stamparatus onto my background stamp. The background stamp will stick nicely to this window or panel that's part of the stamparatus tool. And now I'm not sure if you can see in the light here, but basically my traced marking is still there. And now I have a place in which to place my piece of cardstock. And I know that that piece of cardstock will be stamped nicely when I close the shutter door of the stamparatus. Now I'm just grabbing my Versamark ink and I'm going to ink up the background stamp with the Versamark ink. And I'm going to make sure I get a nice even coat of this Versamark ink. Next step is to close the shutter door on our piece of cardstock and make sure that you apply firm, even pressure, especially around the inside of the stamped area here. The hinges can sometimes make it so that the stamp doesn't stamp quite as even as you like, so you really want to make sure you apply some nice pressure on the inside edges of the stamp where it borders the tool there. And as you can tell, I didn't stamp right up against the hinges, also for that same reason. You're now going to open the shutter door to your stamparatus, and your cardstock with these background stamps will most likely be stuck on to the stamp itself, especially when you're using an ink like Versamark. So I'm just going to lightly peel it away trying my best not to bump it against the stamp. And there it is. Beautiful. Next step is to take a piece of folded paper, and I'm going to use some clear embossing powder to cover that background stamped image. We are going to heat emboss with this clear powder, and you'll see the look we achieve with it. It's gorgeous. The next step involves applying a coat of darker ink, which is where the Joseph's coat term came from, I believe. I am applying some Memento black ink using a sponge for today. And the reason I chose this ink in particular is because it's dye-based, and unlike the other black inks that Stampin' Up! Carries, the embossed areas will resist this ink, meaning you can wipe it off, and the ink will only adhere or apply to the areas where the paper or cardstock is still showing. The next step in this process is to take a paper towel and wipe off any of the areas on the embossed image that might have some excess ink lingering around. And now for the fun part, to decorate and embellish the rest of the card. As you can see here, I've already trimmed down my stamped image, and I've matted it with some Whisper White and basic black cardstock. The card base will be made of basic gray cardstock. I've pre-cut some elements using some of my favorite sets of Stampin' Up! Dies, such as this vellum banner here. I also created this little zigzaggy type pattern using some glimmer paper. And one of my favorite sets of Stampin' Up! Dies, the mini treat bag dies. I took this die here and I cut a piece of this cardstock along the one edge. I then flipped it over and ran it through again right along the same edge to create my piece of zigzag paper. I know there's a better name for that, but that's what I'm calling it today. This set of dies was also used to cut out the stars that are shown on today's card. Seriously, this is one of my most favorite sets of dies ever, and they are only available until the end of May through Stampin' Up! Because I love these dies so much, here's a quick glimpse of them and what is included in this set. I'm now going to fast forward as I adhere a bunch of these elements to my card. I will be using some of my favorite Stampin' Up! Adhesives, of course, including tear and tape adhesive, a few mini glue dots, and some Stampin' Dimensionals, as well as green top multi-purpose liquid glue. For a full list of Stampin' Up! Supplies that were used to create today's card, please visit my blog at www.carebearstamps.com. Scroll down to the end of this post today, and you will see all the supplies that I used. I've slowed the video down again for a moment here because I'm going to show you how I created this tassel on my card. I took a piece of the basic black shimmer ribbon and I pulled at one edge of the ribbon. You can see I get kind of that gold thread that's in there, and I just pull it and I keep pulling. And as you keep pulling, you create a frayed piece of ribbon that looks like a tassel when you tuck it underneath your card. I believe they showed us something similar to this on stage in Salt Lake City in the fall. They created a peacock tail using the pink shimmer ribbon that is available in the catalog. It's a pretty cool idea. And now we'll speed things up once more. That's it for today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video tutorial. Please remember to check out the video description section of today's video tutorial because there is a video hop today. The Creating Kindness design team has lots of wonderful technique tutorials to share with you today, so make sure you check them all out. Thanks so much for visiting again, and bye-bye for now.